Getting out of prison after 19 years and trying to adjust to the world was a shock, to say the least. I had an hour and a half's notice that I was getting out. And a lot of guys have a lot more time, but at 2 o'clock in the afternoon one day, they told me I was going home. And an hour and a half later, I was giving my mom a hug for the first time in a year and a half because of COVID. I was walking out the gates for the first time in 19, it was just mind-blowing. And I wasn't prepared as much as I had planned, as much as I had thought, as much as I had imagined what I would need. I was overwhelmed. And that's one of the things that guys don't usually talk about. I've gone back to speak at one of the prisons, and I said, look, we talk about housing, we talk about work, and we talk about education, and those are vital things. What we don't talk about is the emotional toll of being in prison for years and decades. We don't talk about the shock of getting out, of being released and feeling alien and wondering and questioning. I walked into a Walmart, and I was still wearing the release clothes. They gave me these long khaki pants that hung over my feet, and I had them kind of tucked into my socks, and they still hung over my feet. These slip-on boat shoes, and then a khaki shirt. And I walked into Walmart, and I was so self-conscious. And I know most people are probably not very self-conscious in Walmart, but because I was wearing this big, bright neon sign that said I just got out of prison. And it wasn't even a sense of shame or question. It was just feeling alien and feeling out of the way because I hadn't been in the world in so long. It was I've talked to a couple people who were either deployed or who were living or working overseas and came back, and they said the world just feels different. The people feel different. And so I was shocked. And I went in there and I had a little debit card. So when you get released from prison, they give you whatever money you have on your account, put it on a debit card, and you walk out with that. It's that and the clothes on your back, and if you decide to take some of your property. I took a couple books and some old letters. And so I'm walking into the Walmart, and I understand in my mind how credit cards work, but I got locked up when I was really young. I'd never used a credit card before, or a debit card. So I'm explaining, yeah, I need a phone, and I need service, and I don't, I need something that works. Because the technology was radically new to me, and they're trying to sell me on all these things and these points, and I'm like, dude, I got $100. What can I get for $100? And so they gave me something. And it was then this process of, okay, we're gonna go to, not Sam's Club, Costco. So we went to Costco to stock up on things, and that was where I really started struggling because I realized I had nothing. And life requires a lot of things and a lot of plans and a lot of tools, and I only had one set of clothes, one set of boxers, one set of socks, one pair of really bad khaki pants. It wasn't enough to even understand what I needed. And ultimately, the fact that I was free was all that I needed. For all those years, it was look, if I could just get out, I'd live under a bridge. And I lost that in that moment because I felt well, I need to be prepared. I need to have clothes. I need to have tools. I'm going to eventually need to have stuff and a place to live and things to fill that place to live. And it was just so overwhelming that I ended up having a panic attack. So I'm in Costco, not able to comprehend. We managed to get a couple sets of clothes, and that was it, because anything more was just beyond my bandwidth for that day. Because I hadn't been making decisions for so long. I'd been in a place where you order off commissary and there's one of every item. And all of a sudden I feel do you want jeans? Do you want khakis? Do you want corduroys? Do you want dress pants? I was I thought we only had pants. That was it. You only have one style. So adjusting to the freedom to choose was really, really a struggle. Because on the one hand, it seems oh, well, I love this idea and I'm going to have all these options. But it's you go to a restaurant and you look on the menu and I want one of everything because I don't know how to choose one thing. I don't even know what I like anymore. It's just, it's really hard to explain if you haven't been in that situation. But the mental pressure of making a decision is difficult. And these are the really kind of, benign examples. Oh, what you're going to get at the restaurant or what kind of clothes you're going to buy. But as you move forward, we've essentially taken people's power away by sticking them in prison. Rather than empowering them and helping them become better people, we've limited their choices. We've kind of made them pieces of machinery or cogs in the wheel. And so when they actually have to take their own agency in their hands, when they actually have to make their own decisions, they're very limited and they're not prepared. And that's a major concern. So when it comes time to, look for a job or look for housing or whatever, even I, who had a bunch of great ideas, was really lucky that somebody called me up and said, hey, Jesse, I'm getting ready to sell my house. I want to do some work. Would you be willing to come by and do some work? I was yes, okay, simple. I can do that. I know how to do carpentry. I can go do this. Whereas trying to do a bunch of other things, or I had a grand business proposal. I went to a local chain of gyms and I said, hey, I want to use your physician-assisted, referral program. I want to expand that to mental health because I think that, the benefits of exercise and mindfulness on mental health are tremendous, and we could get insurance. And it's this grand plan. It was a really good idea, but I also realized that it was not something I was actually able to put into place at that time. It was not something that I would have been able to take on. So I'm kind of glad they were look, we think this is a great idea, but right now, especially recovering from COVID, we're not in a position to implement any new programs. So having those grand plans and those grand ideas are wonderful, and ultimately I think we need to have something. But one of the scary things is we get stuck in that mindset and we're not adaptable. And I didn't know how to take, all the other options or see what they were. And I had been planning this. Like I'd literally been thinking about having options rather than a specific plan, making sure that I had a skill set that would apply in a wide range of situations. So even with all the preparation, the actual experience of new things and new challenges and new questions was overwhelming and was difficult. And I was incredibly fortunate because I had friends and family who loved me. I came home to a woman who was absolutely amazing and who was there by my side. And even that, like we were really conscious and really intentional about that. Like we didn't move in together right away. I initially moved in with my mom because it was like, hey, this relationship worked really well at a distance, but we don't know if we're going to like being in each other's space. We'd never been in the same room together until I got out of prison. Like all of our relationship had been digital and over the waves and over the phone. So figuring that out, but at the same time, having somebody that I built this incredible bond with, and then slowly introducing the kind of 3D component, slowly introducing time together and in each other's space and in each other's lives was the best decision that we made because we had a strong foundation and we built it up rather than just trying to dive straight in and possibly fall down. But again, the shock of getting out, the shock of new things, and even now, I'll be overwhelmed by things that I think other people take for granted. Like driving isn't an issue anymore. It really wasn't an issue in the beginning, but it's like, okay, if I'm in a new situation, like the first time we went up to Northern Virginia where it's, all these cars and 6 lanes of traffic and crazy stuff and people cutting off, that was really overwhelming because I wasn't used to it. And that was what it felt like getting out of the world. It felt like getting out of a place where I wasn't driving to a place where I was driving in 6-lane insane traffic. And for all the guys that are getting out, I want to make sure they have the resources. So one of the big things that I push for is saying that if we want people who are in prison to be prepared for the world, and the vast majority of prisoners are getting out, so we want them all to be prepared because we want them to succeed, not reoffend, create new victims, and go back, well, we need to make prison as similar to or as in line with the real world as we can, because otherwise people learn to be really good prisoners. And that's one of the problems, I've talked to a lot of veterans, on social media talking about, getting out of the service was so hard for me because I wasn't prepared for the real world. And we've prepared people to be really good soldiers or really good Marines or really good prisoners, and we haven't prepared them to be really good citizens of the world. And I think that the more we can make prison look like the world, and I don't mean that you have to have all these amazing things or opportunities, but you go to work and you get rewards. Like the harder you work, the more benefits you get. And the problem for me was I did all those things because I was interested, because I wanted to have meaning in my life. I was driven to it, and I was essentially punished for it. So I worked for 12 years to get into an honor pod. I didn't catch any charges. I kept a job. I volunteered. I taught classes. I did everything I could. And then the reward for doing all that was after getting into that single cell and getting to a comfortable existence and being able to play with dogs in the dog program, my reward was being shipped to an 82-man open dormitory because that's a lower security level. So essentially we tell people, hey, if you do all the right things, we're going to punish you by sending you somewhere infinitely worse. Whereas the guys who say, F that, I'm going to keep catching charges, or who did get shipped there and said, F that, I'm going to catch a bunch of charges, and got shipped back to a place where they were comfortable, and they had a cell and a sense of privacy, well, what we've done is we've reinforced the criminal mindset in them. We've said, you do the right thing and you're going to get punished, you do the wrong thing and you're going to get rewarded. So we've essentially reinforced the very thing that sent them to prison because we have a prison system that isn't thought out. It isn't intentional. We say, well, it's been like this and this makes sense. Well, no, we have to think about the consequences of actions. And there is an issue of an accountability, and I'm in one of those situations where I can say, I made the right decision, even when it was hard, even when I was punished for it, but I had a lot of love and support, and I had a hope that I was getting out, and I had a possible future. Many guys don't have that. So if we take away their hope, and we take away their connection, and then we reinforce essentially criminal behavior in them, we can't be surprised when they reoffend. But we don't like to talk about this. We like to say, well, prisons have worked forever. No, they haven't. They don't. If you look at the statistics, if you look at the information, it is incontrovertible. What we have in America is a broken system. We can look many places around the world that have much better, much more efficient, much more successful systems. And until we get out of this mindset that we have to keep doing things the way they've been done, like flat earthers saying, no, the world is flat, like who could imagine that the world would be round, we need to move on to what works. We need to open our minds, and we need to move forward with something that makes sense. Thank you.